Welcome into Hoops Forum, a production of Radius Athletics and a Quick Timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller, and welcoming back this week is my co-host, Randy Sherman. Big thanks to our sponsors over at 323 Sports. If you're looking to spend less on team packs this year, check out 323 Sports' famous $55 team packs. They have 4 pieces of apparel in each pack, a short sleeve tee, a long sleeve tee, shorts, and a hoodie, all for just $55. Your players will love them. Parents will love them. Everybody loves them. To find out more about what 323 Sports can do for your program, visit 323sports.com, or you can email a sales rep at sales@323sports.com. They'll be sure to do it right for your basketball program. We are entering here the early months of basketball practices. And one thing that I asked this last week, Randy, on my Twitter account, I did a poll and asked coaches, what do you focus on in the first week? More so offense, more defense, or kind of 50-50 split?
Yeah.
I was a little surprised at the responses that I got. I had 28% of them said offense, 29% of them said 50-50 split, and then 43% of them said defense. I guess I would have been maybe more surprised if it was a bigger percentage there for defense.
That's a kind of a three-way split. It's not too far off, but
not too far off. What would you think of the three? How about if I just ask you, what would you primarily focus?
Offense.
Yeah. And reason being why?
Just sort of the timing and sequencing and coordination it takes to sort of run a nice half-court offense, and just to me, just needs more time than anything else. So I would say we're still going to obviously practice those other things and do some both and do some defensive only breaking down. But I would say probably I would have answered offense and been in that, was it 29%?
Yeah. I wondered how many of them, like the thought process behind it. I doubt they would be all the same. I've heard some, I've even felt this sometimes, like you want to make sure that your players know that the defense is an important part of it. I've never had to talk anybody into playing offense, I guess is what I'm saying. So the just knowing that the defense is a priority. I wondered how many of them it was based off of, the old slogan, defense wins championships.
Well, I think somewhere in our coaching hardwiring, I think people are kind of more of an offensive guy or more of a defensive guy or gal. I don't, like you see that in football, it's pretty common. Like he's a defensive coordinator. He came up on the defensive side of the ball and now he's a head coach, or, or offense. You see that on the football side. That's pretty common. But in basketball, we got to coach it both. It's more free flowing. It's the same players, but I do think that if we kind of have just sort of a natural inclination toward one side of the ball or the other, and maybe even do a little better job on one side or the ball or the other, I would say mine is probably offense. But that being said, you got to coach it both, and I want to have a good defense as well. So but I'd say more of my focus would be probably on offense. If you gave me only those choices.
Yeah. So we decided to go with what the consensus voted on. And so we're going to talk a little defense today. And I wanted to ask you.
The people have spoken.
The people have spoken. And now, so we're going to go ahead and give into it and talk a little bit defense. And I've got some, just get your random thoughts, I think, on some different topics, some that have come from some of the drills and small-sided games that I've posted and gotten some feedback from coaches. And so it may be a little all over the place, but I do think it would kind of give some light into at least one coach's kind of thought process for it, maybe encourage or stimulate the thinking of like why you do the things that you do or choose the things you do, or what you finally come upon, like this is what it's going to be within our entire system or whatever. I'll start with this one. If you were coaching today, what would be your base defense and why?
Man to man. I would say man-to-man. Do I need to be more specific than that?
You can, but I think probably the reasoning behind it and how you come to that and the level at which you view yourself coaching would also impact those things. I think would be good for people to hear.
I view myself probably coaching high school, maybe small college, something like that. But let's just say kind of in that range. I would say man to man, just because I think of the accountability piece of sort of the. I like it when my opponents are guarded. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like a player to be like in zone. Like, I've ran zone, and I like some zones, and what I always felt uncomfortable with is like a player having the ball, an offensive player having the ball, and finding a little pocket of air to, like, where they can find a little safe space, maybe for a moment or two, like where they're not guarded, or they can get in a spot where they're open. And that may be really basic, primal level, like, discomfort that I'm trying to express, but like, I just don't like players being unguarded or open. I want them to be guarded. Mm-hmm. So that's super simplified answer of why is like, I'm more comfortable when when the opponent is being guarded closely, mm-hmm. than them being able to find a gap or a little space or getting a short corner behind the defense and having room to operate. Like, I just never really felt great about how that looked and felt at all. So
the biggest piece for me was the accountability part, where whether mm-hmm. it's rebounding or staying engaged throughout the possession, the zone of sitting in our areas, whether or not you're aggressive with it or not, there was always that at the end of the day, somebody, as I watch film, could justify why they didn't have that person, or why mm-hmm. they didn't box out that person, and just creating that more of aggressive mindset. But with that being said, we've actually used a little bit more zone the last couple of years, but we've used the matchup zone and taught it more of a man. I'm matched up with somebody from the beginning, and I'm always accountable to somebody. I don't know if that's a great idea. I don't even know if we teach it that great right now, but that's my next quest, I think, is to become a better matchup zone defense coach. But the reason being, I just hear a lot of coaches, especially high school. I don't coach at high school, but I probably would feel this way. But there's also part of this at the college level, small college level, just the amount of shooters that you have. And most will say to me, we just really, we get more, there's more of a threat if people put the ball on the ground than just passing around the perimeter and mm-hmm. beating us with a 3-point shot. And I get that.
It's a valid point.
Yeah, I get that. So, I mean, I would encourage coaches to think like, what am I willing to live with? What am I going to get annoyed with, if it's like the accountability part of it? And my philosophy then should probably look to minimize the things that I know that we can't live with, or I don't want us to live with.
Yeah, I just always felt in zone, like our opponent, they could stand in places that gave them kind of safe ground and breathing room, and that's just kind of against my nature. So I like that. That's probably the reason behind my answer mainly.
Yeah, that's good. All right, next one here, and this one came off of this is something that we've been discussing with our players, and maybe to add a little bit more clarity, to remove confusion on their part. I was trying to think of like the best way to answer this, but there's always this kind of, when do I give help and when do I not give help? There's a clear, this is where I stand when I'm in help. Mm-hmm. But because so many offenses are now based off of trying to get to the rim or to the paint at least,
right?
But us also not wanting to bring always two to the ball, because then we create long closeouts. Or how do I know, like, when I'm beat, do I need to go guard somebody else as the person who was guarding the ball? So I guess my question is, how do you teach it? And how do you avoid, if the offense, modern offenses, everybody's trying to put the defense in the dominoes, how do I avoid finding myself and my defense in kind of a blender where we're just kind of trying to catch up to the ball or catch up to the offense?
Okay, so on the screen here, you've got the question, help off the strong side corner.
Oh, my fault.
When to give help. Okay.
When to give help.
Simple answer to that to me was when penetration is threatening the rim. When there's, and if we're talking about dribble penetration, now we might have to help on a post entry or a backdoor cut I'm talking about dribble penetration, help on dribble penetration. Mm-hmm. I would say is when that drive threatens the rim, that's when we need to help. I do see a bit of over helping sometimes in defense where, like, man, anytime a guy hears a ball bouncing, like someone's yelling help, like it's as soon as you hear the error or the ball dribbled, help. I'm not in that camp. I want the on-ball defender to win that matchup, compete on the second or third dribble. But if they're defeated and that drive is threatening the rim, we gotta protect the rim. We gotta help at the rim. So that's my short answer. When to give help when a drive is threatening the rim.
We've probably even gone earlier than that, and I think it's out of oftentimes the help comes too late or so late that you end up either fouling. We went with just, I mean, if the guy gets even kind of a small advantage and a half step in front of you, is to go ahead and let the help defender step up and meet him chest to chest, and then you rotate off of him. And that creates its own set of problems. But that key word that you said, the over helping, I tweeted the other day, I feel like it's a pandemic in basketball because there's oftentimes you'll see 2 or 3 people and they'll say, well, we were stunting at the ball, but you've got 3 or 4 people now surrounding the ball in the paint. And now it's just wide open. It's almost like shooting practice for teams on the outside. So I think giving clarity to your team about like when exactly to help, like, and the more specific that you can be, the more specific then you can be holding them accountable in a film room by saying, we should have peeled off here, or we should have gone away from 2 here, because of what it creates for the offense, the 3-point attempts on the outside. So just being clear, I think, about like when exactly we're giving help rather than just, when he helps, if you think if he's going to get to the rim, like go ahead and step in and help there.
Yeah, I think too that's a form of discipline, right? Like you feel like you're doing something good. I'm helping, but we have discipline about who helps and where they come from and who helps the helper. And if that ain't you, don't help, like, so that to me is an extension of discipline. Like, yeah, we want to help. We're not like a no help defense like that. That's a great way to get layup shot on you all night. But we want to be very clear about who helps, where it comes from, and who helps the helper. And that's usually just 2 players, the person to help and the person to help the helper. And if that's not you, then don't. And you feel like you're doing a good effort, making a good effort. If that's not you and you're helping anyway, you feel like you're doing a positive thing. But discipline would ask, hey, it's not your role right now, not your assignment right now. So by doing what you felt like was a positive effort, you put us in a bind defensively, because now we got 3 guys, 4 guys at the ball, and we leave ourselves subjected to 3-point attempts.
A couple other things that came to mind. You said putting pressure on the rim. Like, I would phrase that as like, there's a good chance that they can score either with an advantage or uncontested. I see a lot of times somebody drive and like their shoulders aren't inside the backboard. Like they would be taking a really tough shot.
Exactly.
And somebody's coming over to help. Like,
and the on-ball defender's maybe still kind of with the guy and is able to contest in the air. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So watch for those. It can be tempting. I think the discipline, the word that you said there, like it can be tempting as that ball's being bounced right behind you to turn around and try to swipe at it or step in. And that's when we get ourselves in trouble.
And it goes back to the overriding philosophy of your defense too. Like what are we trying to take away primarily? So, and what are we okay with? And that should govern when you give help as well.
Okay, and now, and this is closely related, helping off the strong side shooter, kind of the thought for what that looks like, when to do it, and maybe the stipulation that it might look different if I was coaching at whatever level.
Okay. I'm probably on team don't help off the strong side corner. I think that team is gaining members as that philosophy trickles down from the professional leagues. You see that more commonly practiced now than it used to be. So I'm on team don't help off the strong side corner. But I would say that kind of goes back to like, what are we trying to do defensively as a unit? Let's zoom out and ask that question. So if it's to reduce opponent 3-point attempts, then, helping off the strong side corner where the driver sees the help, sees the his teammate or her teammate to pitch to, like right in their headlights, like that's an easy pass. Like your 10th JV guy can make that pass, right? So you stop the drive by helping off the strong side corner, but you might possibly pay a penalty in so doing. I would say that I'm on no help off the strong side corner. I don't want to paint a false dichotomy though, that it like either you do or you don't, because like I didn't mind if players sort of like kind of like bluffed like they were going to help, almost like a stunt, like stunted and then got back. I didn't mind that, but I don't want them to stunt so far in and so aggressively that they can't get back. And the better the shooter, I always analogize this to like a player leading off the first base bag in baseball. Like you can stun off, but if you can lead off, but if the pitcher's got a good move to the bag, it's kind of risky, right? Like you could get picked off. Same thing. You could stun off, but too far in or too late or not timed or then you leave yourself subjected to that, getting hit on that corner three. So I would almost rather don't stunt than just stay attached and leave it to the on-ball defender. If he gets beat, we'll pull help from the help side. But that's more I don't know, that's how I've preferred to do it. If I were coaching, maybe I guess you could make this like scouting report specific to an individual on your opposition who can't shoot. He's safe to help off of. They kick it back to him, but might go in, and you might lose by 2. I don't know. I just never felt great about that. Like it kind of goes back. I just don't like open people. And I understand if we're going to help from the help side and help the helper, we're going to have to leave somebody open, but he's not or she's not right in the headlights of the driver. They can't see them. They have to jump skip or something like that to find them. So I think that's a more difficult play, and I want to veer the defense toward the more difficult play. There are other options other than stunting. You could, help and peel switch or something like that people are doing now. So I don't want to paint like it's either this or that, a false dichotomy. But I don't want the just helping in and then trying to get back. Mm-hmm. If I was on team don't help off, or I am going to help off the corner, if I was on that team, I would just rather you already be in. What I don't want is you coming in and then trying to get out. Just already be in, and then it's just a one-way recovery back to the pitch.
Mm-hmm. I think it goes back to the last topic of like what actually needs your help. Just because the ball is being driven at the short corner doesn't mean that that's something that needs help. But I would also say this, if we're going back to like go help on something that's putting pressure on the rim, technically speaking, if the ball's on the right side of the floor, you would teach any other help situation to come from the left side of the floor. Mm-hmm. And I always just wonder why, just because they're a corner shooter, that we're like, oh, now we give help to go help on the same side of the floor. But I get it. I mean, most of them say stunt. I always wonder when the person tells me stunt, what that looks like, because if it looks like what you described as I'm lunging towards the ball, or even just balance, my balance is going towards the ball, it is very difficult to recover back out to a corner shooter.
That's a great question. I don't mean to interrupt, but I would say, or a great point. I would almost use the word, instead of stunt with my players, I said fake help, like fake, almost like I'm baiting you to throw it to the corner, but I'm going to show myself anticipating that you're going to throw it. And I had a few players who kind of got that knack, and they would fake help, and then when the player let go of the ball to pass it to the corner, they would get steals that way, almost like baiting you to make that pass. By your pattern of basketball play is always that player's going to help in and stay in, and I'm going to make an easy kick. And that looks like what is about to happen. And then when I throw it back, you're already, and you kind of fake the help. I don't know if that puts any finer point on it, but.
No, that's good. I think that I would tend to say that. I mean, where is your balance? If it's coming towards the ball, expect to give up a shot in the corner. Now, whether or not the person that's standing out there can make it, I know can be argued. The level, who's standing out there, whatever.
How quick their releases, all of that. But I want you there on the catch, man, or take away the catch or there on the catch. I don't like open players. So
right. I think the other extreme of this that maybe people think like NBA has even changed with this. It's not like you're turning and running to deny because we don't even want that guy touching the ball. I heard one assistant coach at the NBA level say we want to be 70% committed to the corner and 30% committed to the drive. So we're still emphasizing staying with that guy in the corner, but it's not like we're ignoring the ball as well. So
you're shrinking the space a little bit, but
Right. I think probably an overemphasis on one or the other will probably result in something that you're not probably willing to live with. So, all right, next one here. This is always a question that I get. It's for teams typically that are using something other than like a base defense. Excuse me. How much time do you spend on something other than your base defense?
Like a secondary defense. Right. It's like if you're a man team, but you have a zone that you may need at some point, how much time are you devoting to it?
Right.
It's hard for me to say in minutes or percentages, but some weekly time for sure. I coached primarily man-to-man defense, and but we did play some zone, 2-3 zone, and I spent some time teaching the zone, but if for no other reason, I want us to have a good one to practice against. So when we're practicing against the zone, it can kind of behave well, and we've got a coached up zone to practice against, because we might play an opponent who plays this zone, or we will play an opponent probably who plays this zone. So I wanted to have a good representation of it in our playbook, so if for no other reason to practice against it, but it might come in handy at times as well. I would say a weekly period devoted to your secondary base defense seems like a minimum to me. Your secondary defense other than your base, I kind of tended to pull it out and polish it up when I thought that it might be something we would use a little bit more against a certain opponent than just say spot it every now and then. Like we might actually like play it some, and I would bring it out, polish it up, give it some more attention, do some breakdown drills for it. If we were going to use it against a specific opponent. But at a bare minimum, I think it's like we kind of need to review our package weekly, even if we're not going to use it, just in case we get in a game like, hey, man, we're just getting gashed. And man-to-man, we're going to, if we hadn't worked on it in a month, then it's probably not going to be much better, right? So I would say a weekly check-in with it would be a minimum.
We found success in making our secondary defense principles similar to our primary defense, and that allowed us to kind of work on things less, put a lot less amount of time into it, and the guys still played it well. So it's not like we were defending a ball screen one way in our primary defense and then in our secondary defense defending it separate. And that's really why we made the switch to more of like a matchup zone.
Yeah,
the alignment gave people enough trouble. It wasn't typically like we were running this defense for the entire half and wanted to give a completely different look. And I would just caution, like, if you do want a completely different look, then expect or just understand you're probably going to have to devote more practice time to it, because it's so different from what the players
that's probably true with. Probably a mistake that because that's what I did want. Like, my rationale is if our primary thing ain't working, man, let's
Yeah.
Let's switch it all the way up. Like I'm using it to change the tone of the game, completely. So yeah, if you're going to be in it and stay in it, yeah, that's why I kind of said like I would, if I felt like that was needed for a particular opponent, I would dial up the practice minutes that particular week or something. But yeah.
Okay. That's good. All right, last one here, and this kind of goes with those. Did you ever use or did you ever switch defenses, whether that was like
Hmm.
during a possession or it looked like one thing coming out of a baseline out of bounds and then switch to something else? So based off of a spot on the floor or number of passes or anything like that?
I'm not that smart, man. I didn't do that. That I would outsmart myself if I tried to do
Sure,
that, or and my players would have, three of them would have done it right, and the other two are like, I thought we were in. I'm not
sure.
that smart or that good. I don't think I stayed clear of that. Now that's not to say like within the same game might we be in man or like, and then after a timeout or free throw, I might say, hey, 12, we call our 2-3 zone 12,
Mhm.
12 on the miss or something, 12 on the made or something, like spot it in there. But like intra possession, sort of that morphing type thing, I'd mess that up.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd mess that up.
yeah. I
I'm not,
guess
my players might do it. I'd mess it up. I just don't, my brain works in compartments too much,
sure.
I guess.
I've seen more like trying to do things like that. I just watched a video online this morning about it, and my
Okay.
brain started hurting after I was watching it a couple times. And I'm sure that made sense and there was a pattern to it. But I just wondered based off of the popularity, I think. I don't know that like a ton of people are doing it, but whether that's starting in a 2-3 zone on a baseline out of bounds and then as the ball's entered going to a man, or I've seen some which, on 3 passes, they'll switch to something else. And I just don't know how many people have had success with that, or if based off of the level they're playing at, like just too confusing or whatever. So,
Yeah, I also like envision what would practice be like if that was my deal. Like
right.
it seems like there'd be just a lot of talking and rehearsing, and I like squeaky shoes and bouncy balls in
Yeah.
practice. Uh, I had a coaching friend who it's not the same as what you're talking about, like that intra possession morphing, like you're talking about, but he ran multiple defenses. Like if you scouted him at one game, you would have seen diamond press, man to man, 1-2-2, 2-3, 1-3-1. And he under his seat where he coached, he kept this like cardboard box. And he had like these towels that were different colors, like a green towel, a yellow towel, a red towel, a blue towel. And like he was an energetic kind of one of those like real fiery energetic coaches, and he'd reach down underneath his chair and grab the orange towel and like orange and wave the towel, and like that meant 1-2-2, let's say. And then they'd make a basket and he's trying to like real quick while the teams make like yellow and like you see. And I was like, wow, okay, there's a lot going on here. And now I can see how during the course of a 4-quarter game, if I'm seeing man to man the whole game, we ought to start adjusting, executing.
Hmm.
Unless the team's clearly better than us, we can kind of find our flow and rhythm against a certain defense, and how a changing, okay, they're in 2-3 now. Wait, now about the time we get 2-3 unlocked, they've switched to a 1-2-2, and about the time we get that unlocked, they're back to man. I can see how that is troublesome to play
Hmm.
against. Um, it, but I mean, he's a good friend of mine, so I joked with him. I said, "You look like one of those magicians doing like juggling handkerchiefs, like having colored handkerchief, And he's like, "Hey, it works because we keep teams out of their rhythm and flow, and they're always and if a coach just doesn't have like a sort of like a universal alignment approach, they're having to call this, and about the time they do that, we switch it and they've got to call, and it just sort of creates a lot of frustration. So I've seen it work. Not my thing, but yeah, I've seen it work.
During these early months, especially or these early weeks, like I guess the overarching principle here is like how much time are you willing to devote to these things, and are you willing to sacrifice maybe some other things for these things if you view them as being that important. And to your point, probably some of these things would take up more time or more manpower than probably the return that you're going to get on the investment that you give to them.
I just think, like I always think, all right, to teach all that and to run it well, what are we not doing? Mm-hmm. Where's that? It's like time is like a budget. Like we took the money from this department and gave it to it came from somewhere, right? So where is that time coming from? Like to do, I'd really like to sit and talk to someone who did that to kind of learn how they kind of rationalized all that, which smart, reasonable minds can disagree. So I'm sure they'd have a good answer. I'd just like to hear it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So these are some of the things that Randy helps coaches think through. Randy, you want to talk about the Radius Athletics Ramp program that you have?
Yeah, about to be in my 8th season. This is coming. In fact, there was a coach that I've worked with for probably 7 of those 8 seasons. Had his first game last night down in Mississippi. So they're already playing real games. So so this is season 8 of where I just basically lend my eyes and ears and thoughts to coaches and help them in a group and one-on-one setting. And I'm just always looking to connect with more coaches. So hit me up at Radius Athletics. And year 8, we've been doing an analytics board where we take all the stats and data from all these teams and putting it into a big spreadsheet. It's grown every year. So the sample size on the data is pretty significant now. The analytics piece is in year 6. So yeah, we're getting some good data, and working with some great coaches too. We had a couple state champions, one last year. People that I'm happy to be along on their journey.
Yeah, Randy's a great resource, radiusathletics.com, where you can connect with him on Twitter. You can see if you're watching on the show at Radius Athletics. Thanks to all of you who joined us this week. If you missed any part of the show, you can go back and watch or listen. To watch, go to YouTube, search Hoops Forum, and you'll find the full version of the show there on the Radius Athletics YouTube page. Or if you're more inclined to listen, you can go to any podcast platform and search A Quick Timeout, and there you'll find the audio version of the show. For Randy Sherman, I'm Tony Miller. We'll talk to you again next time on Hoops Forum.